Hey folks, it's Lucid. Welcome back. We're going to be doing pretender design here for Nidavanger. I think give you a heads up of what we're going to do after pretender design. I think I'm going to play some of the pretender designs through expansion just to show you how like different builds expand. Maybe you haven't played a lot of multiplayer or even single player Dominions and you don't have like a good feel for expansion and what different builds can do. Because this is like my fourth time recording this. And earlier times, either there's like a recording error, but even when I like recorded it well, I realized I was kind of only doing what I would call like high skill builds, where you're basically doing like hard expansion, which is usually really punishing if you lose an army or you get unlucky and it routes, like you're going to be in a bad way. And like I didn't have any builds for like expanders, like taking a monster god or something. So I wanted to include some of those, so I'm going back and kind of re-recording the whole thing. But we'll be taking different builds of those. Like we'll be taking a full scales build. We'll be taking like a dormant bless build. We'll be taking like an awake bless build and maybe like an awake bless monster build and expanding with them and kind of seeing how that goes. So, but first, let's talk about the nation. If you missed the national overview, here's a very quick summary. Nidavanger is an interesting nation. They tend to have very killy units. They've got a few flavors of killy units. They've got these guys, which are formation fighters and are going to blender chaff. They've got these guys, which are going to pop open, little heavily armored nuts and get to that nice tasty meat inside. And then we've got the nidbathed, who are the sacreds, which have big two-handed great swords. And they're very good at killing elites as well. So those are kind of the killer units, and then there's some raiding chassis, and then chaff down here with the cub warriors. All the mages are sacred. That's going to be really important for the bless. And then there's the Scar Souls mechanic for the sacred, where they get multiple lives based on how much dominion you have in your capital. So that's kind of a quick summary for the nation. We're going to talk, I think, first about scales. And so there's different ways to build this nation. You can do it focused on the sacreds. You can do it focused on the scales units. If you're focused on the sacreds, these are very low resource, but very high recruitment point units. And in general, most of your guys have very kind of poor defenses. Their only real defense is like very light armor and then like the actual defense trait, but their protection tends to be very low. They're often missing like a shield or a helmet. Yeah, so they tend to die pretty easily. So usually you want to have like a numbers advantage when you're fighting somebody and you want to be blendering them very quickly. But the sacred's really interesting because of the low resource cost and the high recruitment point cost. Oftentimes you're going to want like a lot of order and you're going to need a lot of dominion points to get these, but you're not going to need a lot of resources. And the nice thing about that is you can make a lot of these guys at the very beginning of the game. You don't have to like wait. If you heard those, my phone, yours. You don't have to wait a long time, and that's super nice. So you can kind of scale these guys up, producing a ton of them very quickly. Often what you're going to want to do is take your first scout, profit them, and have them preach in your first province to help get the dominion up so these guys get more Scar Souls when they pop out. And these guys are actually pretty good even if your bless isn't online. Like if you have a dormant bless or something at expanding, so long as they're not focused down. So one strategy with them is like you take them, you embed them with some kind of chaff, like even like cub warriors. And while everybody's going to be dying some, these guys have Scar Souls. They'll be pretty likely to survive, at least a few expansion battles. If they've got the Scar Souls to kind of if they've got the cub warriors or somebody else to kind of eat hits for them. But you can also expand like full scales and things like that. So one of the interesting things is like how many of these guys can you make for different points of like order or turmoil? And because one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to line up how many candles you take. Like if you take 10 candles, how many order scales do you need to take? And the answer to that is 10 candles you need order 2 to produce, but because the nation has a turmoil limit of 1, it caps you at order 1. So we can't actually do that unless we take a god that gives order scales. And I believe there's only one that Nidavanger can get, and that's this guy, the Keeper of the Bridge. So you could have a build centered around this guy where you go order 2 and Dominion 10, and this is the maximum amount of Nidavanger, of Nid here that you can make a turn, and this is going to let you make 9 a turn. And I don't always go through and like do the math for like how many sacreds you can get for different levels of scales, but I went and did that this time because as I was trying to like do expansion testing, I realized I sort of needed to know. and that's probably a pretty good resource for you. So order 2, you can make 9. If you want to make 8, so this is, okay. If you go 10, because you're also going to be making a Sacred Mage every turn, or like a Nid here, which doesn't cost recruitment points, you're only going to be able to produce 9 of the Sacreds, right? Because one of these candles, one of these holy points is going towards the cap-only mage. Now, if we go down to 9 candles, Dominion Strength, that means you would be producing 8 bathed a turn. And you can do that with only order 1. So like this. This would match up. Then if you go neutral order, then you can make 7 a turn. So that's corresponding to 8 candles. The thing is if you go turmoil 1, you are going to be making 6 a turn. So just tick this down by 1. What's interesting though is at this point you can also tick this all the way down to 2, because this is the same number that you can make. If you have turmoil 2, you can still also make 6 a turn. So there's some other kind of math that factors into this calculus of like how many, like what's the trade-off between these different kind of breakpoints. One of the things is that if you'll notice, like look here at recruitment points. Oh wait, this doesn't actually change. Oh, this changes resources. Okay. For some reason, I thought the productivity also gave you a bit of recruitment points. I think it did in Dominions 5, but I guess not. The other thing that factors in, or other thing that factors in, is that the growth and death scales will eventually erode your population, and that will cause you to lose recruitment points. So if you take death, which I think there's a lot of like blessed builds where you would want to take death, that will eventually erode your ability to produce more of these guys. But for the majority of the game, order is going to matter more than death. So that's sort of some of the math here with these scales. Now, it's important to mention here for productivity that you can generally dump this. This is sort of a dump scale for the nation. You don't really have a lot of very high resource guys. That being said, the Bear Clan do take significantly more resources than they do recruitment points. These guys are about equal, and then these guys, they still take a fair amount of resources. The Bear Clan are really the exception, where they really don't take many recruitment points at all. So if you knew you wanted to make a lot of Bear Clan, this would actually be the one unit where you would consider slamming productivity. And this is it's one of the reasons that if you want to go a full scales build, and by full scales, I usually mean you're taking something like this. If you want to do something like that, then it's going to open up the ability to get a lot more Bear Clan. So you'll be a lot more kind of reactive. Now, that being said, because most of these guys are recruit anywhere, even if you don't have like optimal scales for production, you can still sort of kind of catch up if you're really diligent about making all of your provinces produce units. So, and then you're going to have to do a lot of logistics and kind of ferrying around, but you can manage that. So that's kind of how to think about productivity. I think generally it's a dump scale, but if you're doing a full scales build, there is a lot of value in getting the productivity, especially for making Bear Clan, but it's also going to help you out of the gate a bit because you will be resource gated, as one normally is at the start of a Dominions game, when you haven't cleared your cap circle yet. So, yeah. Then growth. This is nice to have. If you're a scales build, you want it. If you're a sacred build, it's pretty likely you're going to be tanking growth. It's a lot less punishing. Growth is in Dominion 6 is not an auto pick anymore. I think it's a great scale to have. It's definitely in the long run your best income scale, but it's been nerfed significantly enough that you really shouldn't feel that bad about picking death, I don't think. And then luck is something we would sort of probably like to dump as well, just because we probably want to have like a better bless for our nidbathed. So this is a dump scale. However, one of the best blesses you can get for the nidbathed is going to be the luck bless, which of course requires that you take luck 2. So that's going to be a bit of a trade-off. And then magic drain. The big thing with magic drain is if you go magic, which you want to, and there's some pretenders where you can take magic 3, like if you get the Idol of Sorcery or the Allfather, you can end up going magic 3. But the more magic you have, the better your apprentices are going to be. So basically, if you go magic 2 or 3, you're probably going to be making a lot of these apprentices, and they're pretty useful, especially the astrals, but certainly also the water and the nature are pretty useful. Earth, sort of useful. Death, not very useful. So, yeah, you can make more of these, or you want to make these because they're going to be 8 research for basically 30 upkeep. which is really good. However, if you take Drain 2 or Drain 3, these guys become pretty horrible. Like just in Drain 2, they get on a 3 research for 30 upkeep. That is a very far cry from 8 or 7. So these low research mages, magic drain scales matter a ton. If you want to go drain, which you can do, it's like if you want a drain build, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mostly probably ignore the apprentices, and you're probably mostly going to want to get these Bear Clan and these Wolf Clan set Enders. So, these guys are going to take a bit of a hit in drain scales. They're going to go from 11 down to like 9 research, but that's nothing like going from 5 to 3 in terms of percents. So that's basically what you're looking at if you dump drain. That's kind of the trade-off. And the other thing is, of course, if you go magic scales, it's not like you're only making apprentices, right? You're also going to make these, but these are going to be your little lab rats and research monkeys. So, and if you go drain scales, it doesn't mean you won't make any apprentices. You'll still want them to like do miscellaneous forging and other kind of army buffing tasks, right? But they're just not going to be very good lab rats in terms of research. So those are kind of the scales. And again, to kind of summarize, there's a big synergy if you're making nidbathed from taking a lot of dominion and a lot of order so that you can make a lot of your sacred early. The final thing I'll say on scales is that as you build more temples, you will be able to get effectively more candles, right? So, but it's going to be much harder to get more recruitment points as the game goes on. So if you have to choose, like, do I get more, like ideally you sort of want them balanced, right? But if you had to choose, you kind of want more order. And if you take death, then eventually death also is going to make you lose recruitment points. So it's like, if you go death, then you kind of want to be even higher in order to prevent the eventual loss of production of nidbathed. But this is pretty slow. The rate at which death is going to make you lose nidbathed production is pretty small. I don't know what the number is, but I'm expecting it's going to take 20 turns for you to lose 1 nidbathed a turn. It'll probably depend too on like how many points left over you have. Like if you're just barely making 8, it might cross that threshold pretty quickly so that you can only make 7. But if you're almost able to make 9, it'll take a long time before you can't make the 8. Okay, so now we're going to do a bunch of builds. So kind of the part you tuned in for. I'll start. There's a few different varieties of like a dormant imprisoned. I'm not a dormant, like a dormant strong bless build. And we'll do a few of them. So I think for most of these, we're going to want to be at Dominion 8 with Order 1. This is going to allow us to kind of produce a lot of these sacreds. And then we're going to basically dump everything else, except in this case, we're not going to dump luck because we're going to need that. We might add some scales back later, but we're just going to dump them up to free them for making the bless. And we're going to go ahead and get a fair amount of glamour. We're going to get this up to 8 because we're going to be getting luck. And then we're going to be getting a few of these. As you can see, we're negative, but then once we take this, we go positive. So we'll probably be able to add back some of these. We'll probably be able to add back a scale or maybe 2. We'll see. So the first thing we're going to get is luck because, I think the previous times I've gone through each bless and said which ones are good, which ones aren't. There's a few things I kind of do want to say. One is that Righteous Wrath is going to proc on death. Basically, all the on-death effects are going to proc every time a Scar Soul gets used. So Righteous Wrath would get procced, Death Explosion would get procced, and Luck will also get procced for potentially lethal hits. So, those are pretty useful. Luck, what's really nice about this is going to cover all the different kinds of vulnerabilities that the nidbathed have. Like, there's going to be a lot of ways they die. They don't have great resistance. They don't have amazing defense. They don't have amazing protection. And basically, rather than us going and trying to patch up each and every one of them, we just take this and then we sort of forget about it. We've reduced attrition a fair amount and that's good enough. Now, there's a bunch of other things you could get after taking this. One thing that would be pretty good is Stygian Flesh. This is going to help to make them... This is like a purely defensive focused bless. So that would be going a long way. The other ones that you really want to look at, I think, in Astral are Spirit Sight. Because with the dwarves you can put up, that potentially would give like a period where there's going to be a lot of darkness cast. You also have death mages. It's really easy to cast darkness. Spirit Sight's going to let you see through it. It's also going to help with glamour shenanigans. So Spirit Sight's a strong choice. So is magic weapons. The other things I think that make sense to look at here are Ethereal. Ethereal's really nice. Like very, very good if you're not expecting a lot of magic weapons. So definitely something to consider. The only problem with Ethereal is it's a huge investment, and it's very possible you just get like hard countered if they take magic weapons. So, but anyway, it's still a decent choice. And then I think for death, really the only thing you want to really look at here is reforming flesh. I'm not reforming flesh, Stygian flesh. And the only second thing, well, there's a couple options. One is half dead. This will prevent you from getting like a disease affliction, which will be kind of annoying on your nidbathed. You know, they'll accumulate afflictions and won't heal. Somebody was saying you get a twice born affliction removal check when you die. I don't really know how that works. And I don't know how dying on the strategic map with disease interacts with Scar Souls. I assume you come back. I assume Scar Souls would not let you die from disease, but this is nice. It's also, you have old age commanders, so this will take the edge off of old age there. So this is definitely worth considering for just 2 points if you're running death. And the other thing is Undying. If you take regen or if you buff regen, Undying can be okay. This is going to apply every life. So if you have 10 lives or 5 lives, you're going to be getting like a lot of effective hit points from this. So it's worth considering. It's not bad. Down here, Blur and Displacement can be pretty good. Both of these are nice, but it kind of matters who you're fighting. Again, these can be hard countered. But they're pretty solid. They're going to add to the only decent, really, style of defense that your nidbathed have, which is give them effectively better defenses. Yeah. So anyway, these are options. I'm not particularly fond of them, but Blur wouldn't be bad. Heroism's also probably worth looking at. I'd probably go for Heroism before I'd go for Blur, just because it can't really be countered. And yeah, so something like this. Now we could pick up a bunch of different things. I think my inclination would be to pick up magic weapons here, because I feel like that you're putting a lot of eggs in the basket with this bless. Like we're kind of tanking our scales. This is not a scales build. So best if these guys can't be hard countered by something with, invulnerability and ethereal or something like that. And that leaves us 2 points left over. You could either do half dead with this, or you could pick up some heroism. I think for us, we'd probably pick up heroism, though I think it's probably about equally good to get half dead. And yeah, so something like this, and then we have a bit of points left over. So we'd probably take a bit of magic back. And I'd really be inclined, we can't take order up any higher. Yeah, something like this is maybe nice. This might end up giving you another Scar Soul life a bit sooner. The other option, no, we can't afford another one of these, but you could maybe afford that. This might also be good to get you a bit higher in Astral. So I think we'll call this one of the builds for this one. So that's the first build we'll look at. I'll show you another build here where we'll do so this was a dormant luck build. There's of course a lot of ways to build it. You could try to throw righteous wrath on or something like that. I'm now going to show you a dormant quickness build, and we're going to use a Titan here. We're going to use this guy, the Father of Winter. And the reason is he's reasonably high Dominion, and he's got high starting water, which will be easy for us to drop in quickness. Now, quickness, the requirements are you need water 9 and magic scales 1. So we'll be doing that. We'll probably need to put a bit of air up. The other thing that's nice is this is a very strong super combatant in friendly Dominion when he's fighting in the cold, because he's got cold power 1, as well as pretty good baseline stats, and then a very powerful chill aura. And with air, he can now magic phase, so pretty strong. We're going to go ahead and pick up quickness, as would be part of this bless, the main part. And then I think with this, you probably, you can get swiftness or something, so you run a tiny bit faster. I think what you really want to do here is you pick up defense, and we're going to be going dormant with this. You could also take it awake probably and sack scales. I'll just flash up a kind of quick version of that. Something like this. We can't sack magic. So yeah, you could do a build like this and this is the break point. You could make 7 Nidhair a turn that are quickened and have high defense. So this gives 2 attack and defense, and this gives 1 defense. So that's going to put the nidbathed at 16 defense, and they're going to be very killy. So they'll be very, very strong in melee with a build like this, and it comes out swinging. So you could do this awake, and you have a pretty cool Frostfather. I don't think once you make armor, he could defend, or he could probably use him to raid, or expand basically. But I don't think you could use him before you put armor on. He will make people in melee, so he can do air shield at the beginning, so he's not going to be worried about ranged attacks like javelins. But he really is going to need that armor. Once he has the armor, I think he's going to be looking mighty fine to go expand. The starting income that these guys have is death, which is not great for armor, air, which is not good for armor, and astral, which isn't great. There is low level like construction 1 astral armor, but it'll take you a few turns. Your best bet would be to like trade with middle-aged elm or something if they're in your game. So yeah, this is this guy. If you want to go a dormant build, then you can get a lot better scales. So I think with this, we would probably look to maybe alleviate a bit of the productivity early. And maybe not trash this. Oh, we probably... I think in the other build, we didn't go cold 3. I think you probably do want to go cold 3. I will say this about the temperature scales. You can take this all the way to heat 1 and get more design points than trashing temperature in the other direction. And that's a way to free up some of these. However, all your guys have cold resistance. So you are kind of at an advantage fighting in the cold. So I think you sort of do want this. You kind of do want cold. The downside about taking cold, and what is nice in some ways maybe better about going heat 1, is in cold 3 in the winter, you will take pop kill. I think this is a really weird, janky mechanic that Illwinter has in Dominions, that if you go 3, then for like cold 3 or heat 3, then in the summer or winter, you're going to have pop kill, even if that's like a national preference. It seems very strange to me. I don't think I like it. And I'm not, it may be better to just go heat 1, because then you're not dealing, yeah, you get an income malice, but you're not dealing with the pop kill in the winter, and you get some free design points. But I think with this nation, the cold resistance does make you, I don't know what the right answer is, but at least you know about it. You can think about it now. So we're going to go cold 3 with this build in particular, because this guy really does want to fight in the cold with cold power and a chill aura. And then I think we'll probably take... maybe we do something like this, go growth 2. So now we've got decent scales. We haven't completely sacked productivity. We'll be able to make a good number of troops. We have a magic scale. We've got a bit of turmoil. This guy would be very solid, I think, to take into a game. I think the downside of going a quickness build is that this is something you can buff on your mage, like on your troops. However, you know, even though you can buff it on your troops with the Wolf Clan, you could also be casting Liquid Body instead. Quickness is a very expensive buff to put down, even in the end game. You know, quickening is a small area of effect and it costs a gem. So I think this is fine. The nice thing about quickness is that it kind of makes up for one of the weaknesses of the Nidbathed, which is that even though they're very killy and do high damage, they only attack one target. So they're not very good against chaff. And the quickness with both the bonus to attack and defense, and then, you know, of course, doubling the rate of attack, they're going to be much better at taking out chaff. So I think this is a pretty cool build. This would be a ton of fun to play in single player. This might be one of the builds we use if we end up fighting the AI or something. So that's a fun build. So those are some of the dormant imprisoned, not dormant imprisoned, those are some of the dormant kind of blessed builds. What we're going to do now is I'll show you just that like an imprisoned stat build that you can do. I think we're going to be doing it with this guy, the Idol of Man, or Idol of Men. And we're going to be taking a bunch of things here, like so. And we're going to, this build you would actually be expanding with Nidbathed, but we're going to be imprisoned, so we're going to have a lot of design points, so we can take things like Righteous Wrath. We're going to come down here, we're going to take Blood Surge. And then we've got a bunch of air and nature. And I think the things we want, we probably pick up Low Light Vision. That's very cheap for us. It's a very good nature bless for us to grab. And then Swiftness actually is pretty solid. Like being able to walk faster is very cool. Something like this. We need one more design point. And you could look to put a bit more in it. The idea of this is these guys are very killy, and with Swiftness, you're going to be getting across the field very quickly so that you're not having to deal with like a bunch of Archer Fire or Mage evocations. So something like this, we'll go ahead and go to 3. We'll take this up. I think this we're actually going to leave neutral. And I think we do want magic more than we want this. So maybe we sacrifice this by 1. Maybe we go neutral luck. Don't tempt fate. Now, this, you'll hit this breakpoint of being able to make the 7 sacreds a turn, or 1 less than your candles. You'll hit that breakpoint once you get 5 temples. And In some ways, this is greedy. You could also do this, like heat 1, and then that gives us a lot of design points to play with, so we could actually go up like here. So I think these are all kind of different variations of something that's going to be okay. Yeah. And this gives you a god with a lot of good paths on them. The god can't magic phase, so you'll be kind of stuck there, but otherwise pretty strong. Yeah, I think you could totally win a game with something like this. Did I? Oh, here we go. So we'll save this. There's a lot of different permutations, but basically we're just getting cheap stats and a way to run across the battlefield very quickly. So this would be like an imprisoned stat bless. And then you could, of course, take resistances here if you preferred. I think resistances, I think it's better to like play into these guys' strengths, which is like get them across the battlefield quickly, get them doing what they're good at, which is fighting. Okay. And that build, by the way, would also have +3 defense. You get 1 from Blood Surge and then 2 from Swiftness. So that would also have the Nidbathed at 16 defense, which is pretty good. Okay, and now we're going to do some fun ones. I've got 3 different expander builds I want to show you. So one is going to be this really funny one. As we haven't talked much about air blesses. We talked about how Swiftness can be good. Basically, you're paying 2 bless points for the movement and then 2 bless points for the defense, but it's a package deal. The movement is really just good so that you get across the field faster. This bit about it striking first in combat apparently doesn't work. We've tested it. We can't find any advantage or any evidence of first strike working. So this is worth considering. I think awareness is probably a bit of a miss. Flight and flight are actually really interesting, and that's actually the build we're going to do. And you might be like, what? And I'll just tell you my thinking on this. I don't know if this would be great in like a big multiplayer game. However, I think this actually is kind of interesting. So this gives us a few things. This particular weird build, we get Stormflight and Flight. So basically, if you think about it, I'm going to go to the breakpoint of making 7 per turn. I hope I did this right. Yeah, so if you're making 7 per turn, that's with order 0. We'll have to see. We can tank resources all the way down. It's one of the nice things about dragons is they let you tank turmoil. But we can't actually... Oh, okay, that doesn't stack. Okay, so we could still go up to 1. But we're at a pretty big minus. I think with this, we tank this, we tank this, we tank this. We still have 100 points left we have to tank. We tank this, 60 points left. Tank this... Take this. Okay, so I think this is basically what it would have to be, and we're awake. Now, there's some pretty interesting things that come with this build. So why would you ever consider doing this? Think about having, like, these guys really want to be in melee, and they want to be in melee quickly. They don't want to be bogged down in chaff or things like that. If you can do mass flight on a big pile of them, and they're going to be killing basically 1 dude a turn, and they're not going to be dying, at least for a bit, in a battle. And because we have Stormflight, it can't be blocked with Storm. So basically, you're going to fly as soon as these guys get blessed across the battle and start blendering things. And the enemy's on a timer. They have to kill you before you're going to kill all their guys, because you're going to kill their guys really quickly, like within 4 or 5 rounds. And that's just really hard to do against Nidbathed with, 4 Scar Souls. So it's a kind of interesting meme build. I could see this being like a very effective rush strat in like a 1v1. And I think it's kind of cool. I don't think this is not a good build in single player against the AI, because the AI just has swarms and swarms and swarms of chaff. But I think you could maybe just decapitate somebody with a build like this. And maybe a second player. Nidbathed with Flight and Stormflight on them would be very, very hard to deal with. Stormflight is a bit of like a greed pick, because it doesn't really do anything until Storm comes out, which can be a bit later, but this whole build is going to suck if they put Storm up and then you guys can't fly. You're going to be feeling really bad. So this is kind of interesting. The other thing is this god's actually really cool. It can Cloud Trapeze on things, do Earthquake, do Wrathful Skies, things like that. And you can do Staff of Elemental Mastery. So kind of cool. The other one I want to show, it's just an idea, is, and these are kind of talking about different blesses we can do, is, I believe, wait, let me see. Did I have, this guy. So this is a production of 7 per turn with neutral order scales and completely sacrificing turmoil I'm sorry, productivity. So we have sloth. And then sacrificing a lot, but keeping a bit of magic. And this is an awake quickness build. So this guy's going to be a monster expanding. This is a really good expansion chassis. It's got regeneration. It's got fear. And it's going to have a fair amount of, well, not really. It's going to have a bit of defense. But it has 2 attacks, and then this tail sweep is AoE 1. So with quickness on him, it's actually going to be very killy. So this is a very... This should be a very solid expander, and will definitely help you expand in the early game. So you might actually be able to swap this too, and instead of 8 candles, go to 7 and pick up an order. I think I'd probably prefer that, because later you'll have more candles, but you won't be able to get more order. So this would be another pretty cool expander. And the final expander I wanted to show you is actually this one, which is kind of wild. So this is Svartalf Mastersmith. And I'll pull that other thing up because I can't remember. I spent a little bit of time putting them together, but it's this guy. And this is a shape changer, and it turns into that dragon. This guy is sick. It's also a mastersmith, so really good at forging things. And yeah, very, very spooky, because in dragon form, it is big and scary. And the paths we took on it are... Let's see, I'm pretty sure I took more than this. Okay, so actually we're going to have to rebuild it, because this chassis gets -2 to all paths. And there's some paths we actually do want. So we'll go ahead and just rebuild this here. So let's see. We have Nidavanger. We're going to get the Mastersmith. And the idea is this is just a really strong chassis with Dragon Breath, Tail Sweep, and then 2 attacks. And then Fear built in, and then also Poison Cloud, which is really good. It's just a really, really good chassis. And the idea was like, okay, we've got Glamour built into the chassis. Can we also get Luck? So got Luck here. I need to be a bit higher in Glamour. Okay, so we pick up Luck. We want to be awake to use them as an expander, but that means we're going to have to get out our wallet and pay. So we're not going to be able to hit a very high breakpoint. We're probably only going to make 6 a turn, which means we can actually go Turmoil 2. In Dominion 7, this allows you to produce 6 a turn. And I'll just flash this up here, this notepad. This was my notes for basically the production thing. So this is not candles. This is the number you can produce. So anyway, in case I got that wrong earlier. But yeah, so basically we can make with this 7 per turn. I'm sorry, 6 per turn. And that's going to take a lot of the pressure off of, like, we don't need to have super high candles, and we can tank this all the way down to 2. So we can kind of have not very good scales at all, and still be able to get a decent amount out. You know, we're not going to be producing as many as other builds, but we're going to have this Awake Expander that's going to be really badass. Now, the things that we want to do are, we're going to want some regeneration. I would actually like 4, ideally, because this is, after -2, this is going to leave us 2. Which would be really nice. And do we take... We actually... Yeah, we're going to have to tank these as well. I don't know if we can... We can get to 1, and then you'd have to put a gem on them to do... We can't also magic phase with this. Okay, so I think it'd have to be something like this. I made a couple changes. I took this down to 6. And what this means is we're only going to be able to make 5 per turn, nidbathed at the start, until we get 5 temples built, which for us, temples are pretty cheap. That shouldn't be that long, especially with our dragon out expanding, generating a lot of gold for us, etc. So yeah, once we get 5 temples built, then we'll go from 5 production per turn with 6 candles up to 6 production a turn with 7 candles. And that's basically the corners we have to cut to make all this fit, because what I want is I want to have this guy be able to cast personal regen. The other way you could do it is if you want to be magic phase capable, you could do this. In some ways this might be better because these are sort of better cross paths. So I think we'll stick with this actually, but you would then want to stick a ring of regen on this guy because, you know, they could die. Now for the rest of the blesses, we have 5 bless points to spend. So let's figure out what we want here. We probably, what 5 could we get? We could get Blur, which would be like effectively 2. Yeah, that could be quite good. Strength would not be bad. reconstruction. That is to be Earth 5, which we can't afford. I think that what I'm looking at now is actually Blur and Heroism. I feel like these are probably going to be the best for expansion. This is going to be good against raiding, indies, and like PD dumps and stuff. And then Luck is going to be good against like elites and mages. So, yeah. Not amazing, but pretty good. And then this guy's going to be like really good at expanding. And the cool thing is, because it is a Mastersmith, it does have this form too. So you can like cast rituals and stuff. And you can magic phase potentially in this form too. We should be able to magic phase like this. Let's check out the Pretender here at Fafnir. And yeah, so we're air. This is what it will look like when you're in dragon form with the paths on. It'll be air 2, earth 2. And these are really good paths because this is enough to still do mist form and summon earth power and tipper flesh without it costing an arm and a leg. Late game, this guy's going to be doing Legion's Demise and stuff like that, and all the big glamour buffs. And the nice thing about glamour is this is like not a path that you have easily on this nation. So a really strong Pretender. Let me pause and just see if there's anything else I really want to show you here. I think this was, yeah, like this is a kind of interesting build. It's quickness, but we're throwing in Righteous Wrath and fire resistance. I think some of these I had the order to production ratio off here. Like this is order 1 with like, we would actually be able to up this to 9, but this actually is fine because once we get candles up to 9, we'd be able to make 8 per turn. So, yeah, this would be a good solid build. This one, yeah, no, this one actually checks out. That's balanced. This guy's really interesting to do like full scales. If you want to do this, you can take like a really cheap Keeper of the Bridge and take him imprisoned, and then get order 3. Oh, one thing we didn't do is let's actually do that. Let's make the complete full scales. So complete full scales, this is like not using, we're not even worried about the nidbathed. We might make some of them, but we're not going to be planning our build around them at all, really. The Bless will really basically be just for the mages. So we go like this. We take only a bit of Dominion because, again, we're not worried about nidbathed. We're taking this guy. We want him to be able to like maybe do like a few earth things. Hardly spending any on it. And just taking good scales. And then wait, doesn't this guy, oh, this guy lets us take 2 for this. And then actually I think I would actually do this. So this is like a really basic full scales build, and then you get an Imprisoned Titan. This would be a ton of fun to play. For the Bless, you could do a lot of different things. I think larger, you have a lot of nature mages, you can do that you can cast that easily. I'm thinking for this one, we probably would maybe like, oh, if we're doing it for the mages, we should stack Reinvigoration. Something like this, like give them a lot of Reinvigoration, and then maybe some shock resistance. And then some low light vision. Something like this could be kind of interesting, or you could take poison resistance here, depending on what you're worried about. So yeah, but this is like a full scales build, and you're going to basically play this with the scales troops. So I'll name this guy Scales so I remember to look at him. But yeah, so next episodes will be expanding. We'll probably take a couple of the builds we went through today and use this for expansion. So check that out. It should be fun. And we'll be doing speed expansion, which means we'll probably fail a bit as well. So we'll see you there. Cheers.